Well, here we are. Hello, everyone. This is Denise Stegall. I am the CEO and curator here at livinghealthylist.com and your host of the Wonder Series. So I am really excited about today. I'm really excited about today. It's going to be a really fun conversation with Miss Nettie Owens. Before I get there and tell you more about Nettie, let's talk about the Wonder Series. What the heck is the Wonder Series anyway? The Wonder Series is truly your once a week time to step back and wonder what life would be like if you looked at it from another perspective, if you opened your mind to the different possibilities and the opportunities that are actually out there, but you may not be seeing. And essentially, how will that help you create the healthy, happy lifestyle that you've been looking for and truly flourish in life? So often we say to one another, oh yeah, everything's fine. I'm doing good. It's okay. But we don't want to be just okay. We don't want to be just fine. We want to flourish in life. And we are here today to help you get to that next step and flourish in your life. So I would like to read the bio of my guest today. My guest is Nettie Owens. She's an internationally recognized and award-winning expert, author, and sought-after speaker on accountability and productivity. Her methodologies are brain-based research and backed by science, which is so important to me here at Living Healthy List, because the science and the data never lie. Back to Nettie. Through her training, speaking, coaching, writing, and she has more than 100 video interviews on what businesses need to know right now, which is also the name of her latest book. She brings over 17 years worth of ideas on productivity, accountability, leadership, and entrepreneurship to the community and beyond. She seeks to create an environment of success where all voices are heard, which is really essential in the workplace, in the home, and truly in our lives as a family and as a community. But who is Nettie really? She is she's an entrepreneur. She is a wife, mother of 3, and expert at growing businesses without feeling overwhelmed. Nettie, we really got to talk.
Happy to.
She believes that we all owe it to ourselves and to those we love to show up fully in our lives with the energy that's necessary to live our missions, which is what we're talking about this month. And she uses her expertise to help business owners and entrepreneurs connect to their vision, take action, and truly have that energy that we need. So Nettie, hello, and welcome to the Wonder Series.
Hello, welcome. I'm so glad to be here. We were having such a nice conversation ahead of time. This is just a brilliant program, and I'm pleased and honored to be able to be talking to you today. So thank you.
Thank you. It's great. It's so much fun to get to meet people and really from all over the country and all over the world who are like-minded and all kind of put the pieces of the puzzle of life together. So I think it's really exciting that we have this opportunity today. So let's talk a little bit about how did you get to where you are? You've been doing this for 17 years, but
18.
Obviously
I realized I should update the bio.
I know the time just keeps ticking, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, for sure.
So who was Nettie 18 years ago and how did you get here today?
Yeah, so Nettie 18 years ago had just moved from California to Maryland. I was assistant director of database services at a child and family services agency, which meant that I wore a lot of hats because it wasn't like there was a big IT tech department in the social services agency.
Sure.
I was working on projects that were transitioning companies to use to follow the HIPAA guidelines that we all expect and take for granted right now. But at the time, that was all brand new. And I did not have business ownership really on my radar. My husband had started a consulting firm, which I helped out with, but it was basically him, offering his consulting services to do coding and things like that. And, so being a business owner really wasn't like, oh, I aspire to start a company. Even though I do have a minor in business and entrepreneurship, I love it. that wasn't the path that I saw myself on. So I was just kind of going around and thinking, okay, I think that sometime soon I want to start a family. And if I put in my hat for the jobs that I'm really considering, they're not going to like that. They're not going to like if I start working for them for 6 months to a year and then I ask for maternity leave. And so I thought, well, what else could I do? And so I thought, well, let me try this. Let me try owning my own company. And at the time it was really simple. I was just letting people know that I did organizing. I could help you organize your kitchen or your help with a move, or maybe help with meal planning and things like that. That was it. Like, that was the big game plan. I wrote a business plan, not realizing you really don't need a business plan when you're a one-woman operation and bringing in, less than $10,000 a year. Those are for bigger endeavors, but that was it. I mean, those were the humble beginnings.
Well, it's funny, not so humble. I mean, those are all really big, kind of the pieces of people's lives that kind of can fall apart really easily.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny that you're talking about this, because I just was reading through some of the work that I've done in the past, and specifically on, organizing the kitchen and organizing your meal planning. And those are things that are near and dear to my heart. My background in health and wellness, or it basically is in nutrition. And so that's really how I started on my path.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really important that we understand that that's where you were 18 years ago. And this is life. There's no straight line.
Nope.
Everybody wants to know, well, how do I do it? How do I get there? There's a lot of switchbacks and detours. And that's part of life.
Absolutely. I'm a fan of knocking on every door, checking out different ways of doing things and being open to when inspiration or ideas come to you. And that's kind of how things really unfolded over these last 18 years. Within a year, I had an employee, and right off the bat, I ended up working with the chronically disorganized population, which is to say people who have challenges in organization that are beyond kind of the typical. They're typically, in this case, if they're chronic disorganization, there's usually something else going on. It's ADHD, anxiety, depression, PTSD, traumatic brain injury, physical differences, those kinds of things that can really impact a person's ability to manage their environment, get and stay organized, handle the day-to-day, and they don't see it changing going forward. And it wasn't because I hung out my shingle and said, this is who I'm looking for. In fact, I didn't even know what those words meant.
Sure.
But however I was communicating was bringing them to me. And so as my business grew and I developed this organizing company, we focused, once I learned what the word was, we then focused on helping this population. And I trained my organizers. We came up with a methodology. I mean, this is spanning now, there was the first employee and then the next one. And then we had eventually, I'm going to say there were about 6 main organizers eventually in the company. And then over the years, I changed about like 24 organizers to work with this population. And some of them went on to own their own companies later, which is great. There are not too many organizers on the planet. We need as many of them as we can have. So it was great. And we developed ways, to really help people who were struggling with that feel great about addressing it, and then also help the family members around them too.
That's really interesting how you said, this is what we were saying, and this is who we were attracting. So I really believe that things happen for a reason. And so those people needed you the most, and they taught you probably as much as you taught them.
Oh, 100%. I know for a fact, because as I said, I started my company before I had children, and all the work that I was doing, the research I was doing, and to know and understand the people I was already working with. Then when my children were born, I was able to see and understand some of the challenges that we were facing there. We wouldn't have picked up on it.
Sure.
But because of this background, I then was able to use things at home, in my work environment and vice versa. And, everything sort of flowed back and forth. We are whole people. And I know this is what part of the Wonder Series is about is, we're whole people. So there isn't a work you and a personal you. There are certainly identities that you show up more strongly with in different environments, but all of it impacts each other space. And that's important to remember, that especially because we will often separate our work selves from our personal selves, and our identity that is enjoying life and pleasure, right? And we don't see that the things that we're doing in our off time impact our work. And I think that's an important connection that we need to make, because there's so much that we can learn from our rest periods that we can then move into our work lives and be more productive in a really positive way.
No, I love that. I think it's really important because I know, in the past, I've worked in the corporate world, and it's true, when you kind of step in that door, almost you kind of leave, Nettie, the real person, behind as you walk in the door and become Nettie, the office person or the worker bee, whatever it might be. I totally remember that, and always thinking how inauthentic it seemed.
Mm-hmm.
And, because your personality is, it's such a big part of, it is who you are, really. And if you can't show that at work, then really what I always thought was, they're not getting the best version of me if.
Correct. Correct. It's
so
true.
We have been talking at Living Healthy List. We've been talking about this month, we're talking about mission and goals, productivity, and how all of that kind of ties into resilience. Our overall theme for the year is resilience, because I think, the last couple of years, we've just kind of gone, okay, we're just going to wing it. So now we're moving forward into a new year, into a new season, hopefully soon here in Minnesota. And it's time for us really to get back on our feet. And I think some of us have lost we were talking about this earlier, like we've kind of forgotten a lot of what it takes to get back on track. And so talk to us a little bit about how your thoughts about resilience and mission and how that all ties into productivity. And then we'll talk more about productivity.
So I'd love to also just kind of pull out a thread here. There's so much that we've learned in this time of stepping back. So we were talking about the differences and how in the past, there really was that dividing line between home and work. And because of the pandemic, that line has been blurred, and perhaps in a good way. We'll talk about some of the challenges that have occurred as well. But the good way is that we are now much more accepting of people being people. We're much more accepting of showing up as you are, or even asking for, time to work in the evening because of a scheduling conflict, or, do we need to be in these meetings if the work can be done asynchronously? And so we are more open to those things. Those are things that I don't desire to go back on. I think we come up with a new normal, and we accept that in this time, we are becoming more adaptable. We're becoming more flexible. We're becoming more understanding. We're open to new ideas. And these are great traits and strategies that we're going to use going forward. So the resilience to me isn't necessarily how can we withstand what we're going through and then get back to normal? But to me, it's how are we really just taking in this challenge and fortifying ourselves in a new way, like gathering the tools that we can use from this experience into our future experiences, and what can we pick up? And there's a lot, I've named 3 things so far, right, that we could pick up and take with us, but there's an awful lot. And I think we've all learned lessons, and that's not to diminish the challenges that we've faced, but those folks that have faced those challenges and adapted because of them are the ones that are really showing that resilience, and they're going to be more successful going forward because of it.
Thank you for that. Because I think when people think resiliency, I think they think, you know, whatever it is, you always have to kind of like snap back and go back to like who you were before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you don't change, as you know, to your core, you don't change, but things do change around you, and you do learn some new things. And that's part, you know, of the adapting piece. So I would agree with you that, you know, taking all of this information and adapting and be able to move forward in a positive way.
Yes, absolutely. And then we can transition that to productivity, right? Because it's something that once we gain that skill of learning how to take the learning from a situation and apply it forward, tooling, you know, like retooling, gathering ourselves, armoring ourselves with that knowledge, that is something that we can apply going forward. I was looking to the side here because I was like, you know what, I did a presentation and just the other day, and I would love to share some of these tools that it wasn't what I expected to do. So I don't know if you're open to it, but I can
Absolutely.
share that.
Why not?
Let's just see if I can open it really quickly. My projects.
So this is the beauty of the resilience and the being able to adapt, and new normal is, you know, we're open to so many more things. So everything doesn't have to be set in stone, and here's the agenda, and we have to follow the agenda just like it is. Been there, done that.
Of course, I'm doing this going, you know what? I don't know if I can get it up fast enough. My team has been wonderfully busy, and the things that were recent are no longer on top of the list of things. So I don't want to hang us up here, but I'll just look really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again. All right. We'll come back to that, but the top one really was that adaptability and flexibility. I mean, if you can hang your hat on that hook, then you're going to be doing really well. So kind of chiming into productivity in this particular time, some things that I feel like are important for us to always keep in mind, whether it's now, whether it was, you know, several years ago, or whatever we're doing going forward. A very important part of that productivity is knowing where you're going. And when I say that, it kind of comes out going, well, of course you need to know where you're going in order to be productive. But we know that in our minds, and so often we don't remember it when we're selecting the thing to do today, right? So that's the rub. It's knowing where you're going, remembering where you're going, and making sure that the things that you're doing on a day-to-day and moment-to-moment basis are actually aligning with that direction that you're moving in. And the reason that I say, you know, we know this, but we don't do it, is because how often do we sit down to do work, or we get up in the morning, you know, to face our day, and we're like, what am I going to do today? I wonder where I should start. And so we're questioning that, which isn't a bad thing. But very often the next step is to open our email or to go to our to-do list. And suddenly we're just moving forward with whatever we thought we should do yesterday, or whoever has written to us and said, hey, this is a priority item for you today. And so we're actually not being conscientious of moving in the direction of our vision. So just a reminder here, it's important to see the vision of where you're going, and it's important to connect with that vision every day in some way, whether that's, you know, doing a journaling exercise or just seeing it in your mind is sufficient. My favorite place to think about where I'm going is actually the shower. It's uninterrupted, you know. Showers are just a wonderful tactile experience anyway. So your mind is in a good space at that point, and you can really open yourself up. Okay, this is what I'm working on, right? And then from that space, selecting what is it that I need to focus on today that's going to get me there. And is this email that's coming in, is that really where I should be putting my energy and attention? You know, should I be responsive to the members of my family right now? Or do I need to take care of myself? Like, you can judge and answer those questions if you're keeping that that vision in mind.
I want to turn this conversation a little bit more towards productivity with wellness, because you mentioned a couple of things.
Yeah.
One being taking care of yourself and taking care of family. So let's talk a little bit about that. What does productivity really have to do with personal wellness? Because there's a huge connection.
Huge. Yes. We are more satisfied. We have a better feeling about life if we feel like we're moving towards a goal. And so if our productivity is simply to check boxes and it does not help us feel like we are completing something or moving towards a goal, then we will start to have that sense of being overwhelmed, a burden for the work that we're doing, and dissatisfaction just in general, right?
Yeah.
So it's really important that we kind of have the right productivity. When we're talking about productivity, it's really it's not about getting more done. It's about completing the things that will move you towards the life that you want to have. So when I say vision, I'm not necessarily talking about, I can be talking about where a person might go with a business. And that's always, my perspective, right? I'm thinking about how can we move this business forward, but it's never that narrow. It's where are we going? Business is an aspect of it. So is your family. How is your family helping you move towards the goals that you have in your life? Or how is what you're doing right now helping you, work with your family to move towards the goals in your life? Or your own personal wellness journey, your own personal self-care and exploration journey. How is that helping you move towards the goals in your life? So when we can have that clarity, then we can judge those things and we can say, we can make that decision that having a walk today is actually going to help me move towards my goals, or staying in bed today might help me. Having a difficult conversation with a family member may be beneficial. Choosing to let go of a conversation may also be the way that we want to go. So productivity is getting those things done, really identifying the big pieces of that plan, and then working towards getting those things done. So to tie this stuff back again, to just kind of keep recentering on wellness, because we're talking a little bit here and then we're going to bring it back in. In order to be productive, you have to take care of yourself. Like, that's the baseline. So everything that I'm talking about is starting with a baseline of getting enough sleep, of eating well, of drinking water, of having exercise in your day. They're not optional. You'd never decide, I'm not going to eat today. I'm not going to drink water today, or drink. I'm not even going to judge. We're not judging what you're drinking, but you wouldn't decide that. You wouldn't decide not to go to the bathroom. You wouldn't decide, like, those things are automatic. And eating well, drinking water, exercising, sleeping, these are all automatic things that we have to have as our baseline. There's so much that's managed once that's the baseline, that now we can say, okay, I got this under control. So I'm now going to, take time to journal, take time to pursue another goal that I might have, work on this project at work, have that difficult conversation. So we have to start with that baseline. And so often we think it's a difficult thing to start with that baseline. Like, when I get this project done, then I'll go for the walk, or when this happens, then I'll start working on a healthy eating plan. You have to turn it around. You have to start with wellness first. But it doesn't have to be very complicated. It can be as simple as like today choosing to have an apple over a cookie. Like, it's that easy. Today, standing up to have your meetings instead of sitting down. Really simple little things will go a long way to raising that baseline.
Absolutely. Nettie, you'd be a great health coach. Everything you just said, I talk about
because
all the time.
I know how, like, there is no success if this isn't working. If you from a spiritual perspective, right? If you are imagining that you are a soul walking around in a flesh container, you have to take care of this. I know you've used these analogies before, but
Sure.
like you would take care of your car. You would put gas in it, you'd change the oil, you would try not to get dings in it, but if you did, you'd repair them. And we don't turn it around on ourselves, and we're wondering why we're not reaching our destination. Well, if your car's not working, you're not going to get where you're going to go. Like it's not a surprise, but we don't use that metaphor for ourselves.
That's so true. That is so true. And truly, it's one of those things, you have to know where you are. And you said this before, you kind of have to know where you are now before you can figure out the path to where you want to go. So you need to know where you are today, but you also have to know what that vision is. And then that's where the path comes in.
Right. And you're only ever knowing like the next few steps. So that's another thing that can get us, caught up, is this feeling like we have to have the whole plan. You don't. If you have the next 1 to 3 steps in your plan, you're good. And allowing yourself to be comfortable with that. One thing that you said just kind of sparked something in my mind. It is important to see the vision and then rub that up against reality of where you are now, which is what you said, taking stock. It is not necessary, and I may get some flack for this one. It's not necessary to understand why you're here. So
I would completely agree with that. I agree with that.
Because I see people getting caught up, and where this shows up is I should be farther along. I don't understand why this is difficult for me. I don't understand why for the past 5 years I haven't been eating well. And when we get stuck there, it's just like it's quicksand. I mean, that's the image that came into my mind right now.
I love that analogy. Thank you.
So, allow yourself some grace to say, this is where I am. I'm taking stock right now. I'm not sleeping enough. I'm not drinking enough water. I'm not eating well. I'm not getting out for exercise. I haven't reached the goals that I've set for myself yet. This is exactly where I am right now. It doesn't matter why I'm here, because you can always take the first step. No matter what happened to bring you to this space, you can still say, I'm here, and today I'm going to drink a glass of water. That had no bearing on your past.
No, I appreciate that, because I know that's something that I like to talk about with people who get stuck in that, well, what is my mission? What is my purpose? And really kind of struggle with like the question, why am I here? I'm like, well, maybe we're not supposed to know the answer to that. Maybe that's what we spend our whole lives trying to figure out. But today, like you said, it's an easy step. Have an apple. What am I going to do today to make my day worthwhile and to touch other people in my community, my family, and actually do something in a positive way? We get so stuck in a negative. And I know when we talk productivity, a lot of people, kind of think of this as a very negative thing, where I think of it as very positive. You said something earlier, Nettie, that I think I want to reiterate. You said that it's not about getting more done. It's about getting the right things done. And I think that was just such an important piece. I wanted to reiterate that. When it comes to productivity, one of the things that you had mentioned in before our interview was on one of the questions was, how do we get curious about productivity to get more done? And the point here is the curiosity. I love talking about curiosity. So talk about a little bit. Talk to us about that a little.
So I love the science and the facts behind why things work. And I think that, again, oftentimes we're sort of just leaning into, well, so-and-so said I should do it this way. And this book guided me here. I say that I wrote a book, but it's not about like, this is the hard and, fast way to do things. And so we get caught up in following guidance about that other people have provided about productivity or anything in our lives. And so I would just encourage listeners to approach all things with curiosity. When things go well, being curious about that. And then when things don't go as well as you expected, also being curious about that. So productivity can be improved substantially simply by asking questions on a regular basis. And those are: what worked, what didn't, what can I do differently? If you added those 3 questions into your day, then talk to me, a week later and tell me about what has transpired just by getting curious about what you're doing on a regular basis. There's no judgment in those questions. It's just, from your perspective, what worked, what didn't, what would you do differently? And then noticing, like, today I felt really productive. I wonder what was different about today. Did I do something different? Did I interact with different people? Did I start my day in a different way? And start getting curious and noting down, those little differences. Same thing with things don't go well. I gave a presentation yesterday and I talked to somebody about it afterwards. And I said, yeah, normally this is the way I do my presentation, but I forgot the end part and I didn't do this. And it was just an awareness. It wasn't like I was beating myself up. The presentation still went well. People still learned, which I felt good about. But in the future, I need to make sure that I have protocols in place so I don't forget those 2 key pieces that I've already deemed are really important. Without curiosity, we get into a fixed mindset, which basically says, this is the way it is. It's always been this way. I either have innate talent or an innate challenge, and neither of those things can ever be different. And when we're curious, we can say, wow, that did not go the way I expected, but I know, because I'm resilient, and I'm always learning, that I could probably change something and get a different outcome the next time. And even if I don't, it might be interesting just to try something new. And that's that curiosity. It's what Carol Dweck talks about in her book, Mindset. It's that growth mindset that we really want to embrace, because I think that in the past, business and otherwise have really been just set on people were either good at something or not. And all the science debunks that. There's just nothing out there anymore that says that that however you're born is the way it has to be. There's room for growth.
It's a learning experience. So you mentioned the science, and I think this is a piece that I really, really appreciate as the curator at Living Healthy List, is the science piece. Because there are a lot of times when people say, oh, well, this has been proven and there's nothing to back it up. So when it comes to science, and I live with a scientist, so we talk about double-blinded studies and third-party studies. So tell us a little bit about the studies and the research that you're experienced with.
So I do look for people, most of what I do, like you, is just curating, looking for people who have done the research and the studies out there, and making sure that they are following the kinds of protocol that would help me believe that what they're saying is true now. And that's important because everything, even science, is colored by your perspective, your environment. You think that you might be doing it in an unbiased way, and perhaps you are, but you're not considering that, like, this other factor that happened to be overarching with everyone at that time. There's so much that's one of the comments that you made was that science and data never lie, but sometimes they do.
Very good point. Very good point.
Because we don't realize it, and it's not intentional. Sometimes it is, but in what we're talking about, it's not intentional. People really often have the best intention at heart, but once we see where something is affirming our bias, or maybe our unknown bias, then we are more likely to continue down that path and believe that it's true. And so curiosity is needed everywhere, even in situations where it just really appears, maybe even more so in situations where it really appears to be true. Asking yourself, what, is there anything else that could be true? Why do I believe it's true? So you asked me about the research and studies. I'm constantly like reading, trying to fill my cup with new information and pulling it together, and not just that, but synthesizing it to, okay, how does this apply now? What do we know about this now? I'm reading a book called The Organized Mind right now. And one of the things that has come up in the book is that people who are at a very high level in their professional success often have a team of people who are basically handling, outsourced functions that their brain would normally do. When am I going to be at a particular place? What am I supposed to do there? Who am I interacting with? All things that a lot of us either manage ourselves or manage in our minds. And all the examples that this person listed were men. And I thought, okay, the study, the information, the research wasn't wrong. It didn't take into account a broader breadth. It didn't take into account women. So I would want to know, well, what about, is this different for women? And then when we look at that, is it different in the United States versus in Europe? Is it different for people with different religious backgrounds? What are all the things that could be coming into play here? And so as much as it's important to look into the research and science, it's always important to also look into placing it in context.
I agree with that, because they're so often, and this is one of the reasons why I started Living Healthy List, is there's a lot of information on the internet that gives you just those bits and pieces, and without with any of the real background. And so people do kind of pick and choose. And I think sometimes that's okay. You pick and choose some things, but then you really do need to research a little bit more on your own and understand where it applies for you. So I think that's really important. So I'm glad that you mentioned the men versus women thing. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, right?
I mean, it may be the case that it's totally the same, but it may not. And I'm, again, just curious about it. So if we go back to your question of like, what am I seeing in the research and stuff now? It's that, vision is important, taking time to really think about and see that future. So, not too long ago, The Secret came out, and other, you have books farther back. Positive psychology is coming out as being, instrumental to productivity and well-being, going back to like books like Psycho-Cybernetics and all of that, right? And what they're finding is, yes, it is true that speaking positively to yourself is important, to seeing a positive future is important. All of that's true. But also what they're finding and digging into it is it's not enough. So they layered onto it, feeling it. So not just seeing it, but actually imagining and feeling the feelings. And fascinating research that's coming out says that it's not enough to see it and to have the feelings, because what happens is we then put ourselves into a state of calm. Actually, what happens is our brains believe it's done. Which might not be the thing that you're looking for if it's not done. So it affects our motivation. So I highly encourage visioning, feeling it, all of that kind of stuff. But when you do, you also have to insert the next step. And the next step is exactly what you said, which is amazing. I love when research confirms, what practices people are already having. So the next step is that you have to look at your current reality and you have to observe the gap. So if you see, this is where I'm going, this is where I am now, what's the step that gets me towards where I'm going? That becomes the magic sauce. And again, what I love about it is I go, okay, this is really interesting, because if we look at different religious practices over the millennia, right, what we see is people believing in a positive future and imagining a positive way that things could be. Let's let's put like heaven, right? So we're imagining heaven, we're imagining positive outcomes for everybody, knowing that all will be well in the end. Okay, so this is a vision that a lot of people have for themselves. And then we bring it back to sin, right? Where am I right now? What are the shortcomings that I have? And what do I need to do to address those shortcomings in order to, they weren't doing positive psychology studies and research, and yet they kind of came around to this anyway. And so when I see that kind of full circle, then to me, that feels like something that's true. I can find examples of it being true in a number of different places and contexts that were outside of the study as well.
That's exciting. I think that's really exciting. This has been an incredible conversation, and we have so much more that we can talk about. So Nettie, I'd love to have you come back and join us again on another podcast.
That would be a lot of fun.
Awesome. So before we go, I would love for you to tell everyone, how can they find you? If you have, I know, I looked on your website. I know with the new book, there is a link to a chapter, a free chapter. If you would tell us how to find that, that would be wonderful, please.
Perfect. Sure. So I am easily accessible online. My website's nettieowens.com. So you can always go there, and there's all sorts of links you can follow from that. But the new book is What Businesses Need to Know right now. And actually, volume 1 came out this time last year. Volume 2 is coming out next month. You can get a jump start by going to whatbusinessesneedtoknow.com, and then you just pop in your email address and we'll send you the first chapter, which is kind of a cool analysis of all of the interviews. So get into that, and some neat mantras that we pulled out from the book because of having all those interviews and seeing the themes that I'm excited. So go there, check it out, get the link, read the first chapter, then let me know what you think, because I'm always interested in kind of getting that feedback. So
absolutely. And we will make sure that we have that in the show notes. Before we go, I'm going to ask you this real quick. What is the one thing that you would tell people today? If they're listening and they're saying, okay, what can I do today to be more productive in my life?
I would say what I want you to do is, for 30 seconds, close your eyes, imagine where you want to be in 30 days from now, and what is the thing you can do right now that will bring that reality to your present moment. And no matter how simple it is, it could be printing a picture or calling a person. Super simple.
I love it. Simple steps. Nettie, thank you so much for your conversation, your interesting background in productivity. And I look forward to speaking with you again on a future Wonder Series.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Wonder Series brought to you by Living Healthy List. I'm Denise Stiegel, your host, and we will see you next Wednesday, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. Till then, I leave you with this: healthy living, happy life. Have a great week, everyone.